instruments have taken me many places. The vibraphone and marimba have always created opportunities for musical exchange.
As soon as I was 16 and could drive, I bought a car. I got this old wagon for 50 bucks, man. And go chase gigs, go play gigs. So I've been playing professionally since I guess I was 15 or 16. I played vibes in various jazz and rock bands when I was in grade school, and I was, of course, the only vibes player that I knew except for my teachers. I got a marimba also in later years when I was probably actually in college, and still the only person I knew playing my instruments. I've thought many times, why don't I play instruments that people use? Why don't I play instruments that people know what they are? And when I go through these reasons in my head, I never come up with anything that can mean enough to make me try and redirect my passion.
I've always wondered, what has the path been for others who play my instruments?
My dad, when I graduated from high school, said, well, he said, I gave your brothers each a car when they graduated. Would you rather have a marimba or a car? And I said, a marimba. And he knew I was going to say marimba. I'm standing by my beloved Canterbury 4.5 octave marimba.
When I was starting out, beginning of the 1950s, there was an event. It was called the National Marimba Camp. And the idea was to advertise this all over the US and bring together as many mallet players as possible. And my parents took me. I was 8 years old. And I won a prize, in fact, a first prize in my division.
Vibraphone to me it's just like second nature to me. And so there's an emotional attachment having to do with my family and my mother's sacrifice, my father's sacrifice. But the sound of it really changes the entire ensemble's sound, the group sound. And there's been sort of a minus and a plus to it. I always think of it as a plus.
This is a photo of me when I was 8, playing with my mother, sister, and grandparents.
I got my children introduced to music because I was a musician, my father was, and his whole family, and it was important to us. And I wanted them to have something that was close to them that they could enjoy.
Well, I started playing classical piano when I was 6, and I started jazz piano when I was 10, so I was taking double lessons. Our music room that was our space, and the piano was at the end of the room. So it's almost like I would close the door and march away from the cacophony and the insanity and the violence in the house, and take these steps and walk to the piano and be seated in the corner, and then make music.
In the music room, I was protected from my father's aggressive behavior, which brought a lot of pain into my life.
After school, your dad came to see me. He said, "My son is going to be a scientist, and I don't want you to encourage him any further in his music."
We'll take him on a gig and we'll give him a chance to perform in front of a little audience, and then I'll do as Dad said. I won't encourage him anymore. And that was the funny story connected to the gig was we were playing a tune, I can't remember what it was, and you were really excited, and I said, "Arthur, take it out." And what I was trying to say to you, that was the musician's language that meant, okay, you've played your 3 choruses, now we're going to finish the tune, and you thought I meant keep going.
After studying piano and then mallets during my teens, when it was time to go to college, my folks actually said to me, "Well, you're not going to be a musician." I went and got a bachelor's in biology. So I would look at the structure of cholesterol, trying to figure out where the hydroxyl rings are, and my head's going, and I'm still trying to hold on tight with all my studies, which ultimately became impossible. Because the vibes in marimba are not really part of any normal working musical configuration, it always required me, from when I was a kid even, to either find ways to fit into situations musically or to create my own music.
I was invited to play a composition of mine in Brazil. It was a dream of mine to play with an orchestra. The first rehearsal, I was anxious because I didn't know how the orchestra would respond to my piece. It was thrilling to hear all the notes coming together, but I was still nervous about the concert. Brazil has such a rich musical culture. It felt right that my piece premiered there. There was an interesting exchange because the vibraphone and marimba are becoming more popular in Brazil. And the rhythmic qualities of Brazilian music has also influenced my own music.
I knew that is the first time that an orchestra plays this piece, and for us it's an honor.
his concert was amazing. It was really...
Eu gostei muito da música e, em especial, da parte para percussão da orquestra.
Somos intérpretes de um compositor ou falecido ou já vivo, mas nunca está presente. E ele não, ele passou tudo, a ideia dele, tudo isso ele passou para nós.
We were friends first, but then we had a Friday night date and we went out to dinner. And I remember at about 10 o'clock, he said, I'm going to have to go. And I thought, maybe it's not going so well. I was surprised. And I said, oh, okay. And I didn't want to ask, but then he said, I have to go home and practice. And then days later, I went to his apartment and heard him play.
Having art in your life definitely makes you happier, and I think our parents have shown us that. But both of us do artistic things. Elliot plays vibes and marimba and piano, steel drums, or whatever. And I like sing and dance and play guitar and all that. So I think it definitely has just shown us that it's really a valuable thing to take part in.
I think it's important to follow your dreams in life. Like, you might not have the stability other jobs have, but you get to actually do what you want.
You have to have talent, but I think that's not necessarily the determining factor of success. I think the hard work and the drive is incredible. It's constant. It's 24 hours a day of thinking about what you produce, and you have to be able to convey your vision and your dreams and what you produce to other people, and that's a very important connection. And you are risking your entire self when you choose this career.
In score, you have to follow a tight schedule and play the exact notes that another composer wrote. While in improvisation, you get to make up your own song and you're more free.
Let's go, drum. All right. Here we are. Here is the vibraphone.
The vibraphone, I think, was originally called the steel marimba, but the actual vibraphone, which was brought into jazz in the 1920s, got its name because it had a little bit of a different design than the marimbas and the xylophones, in the sense that it had this kind of rotating wheel underneath the metal keys that created vibrato, and thus vibraphone. So kind of a wavering of the sound, a little bit more of an expressive sound.
People ask me, you know, riding next to on an airplane or something, oh, what do you do? And I say, I play the vibraphone. And 9 times out of 10, they'll look at me and say, well, what is that exactly? I think the explanation for the vibraphone's narrow exposure is that it has stayed within jazz music. You rarely see it in classical music. Rarely see it in pop music. You don't see it on TV, you know, with rock bands or pop bands. The marimba you see even less because it not only is used in classical music, but only as a solo instrument primarily.
It seems we've always had to tell the layperson exactly what it is we play. We're told that it started out as a hole in the ground that would fill up with various levels of rainwater.
Anyway, people get confused about xylophone, marimba. So it basically overlaps and dovetails the range of the marimba and extends it up from about its middle on up. It was a show instrument. You know, there are a lot of show pieces that were written back in the 20s and 30s.
What is the definition in the Britannica for marimba? And we looked it up. It said, quote, stacks of wood beat upon by savages. This was my debut in Town Hall, New York in 1956. And that's where I was labeled as the first concert marimbist. This was the marimba orchestra at Northwestern University. Now all of those were Musser instruments, and Musser was the conductor. And you see the girl up in the back? She is playing a bass marimba, but the resonators are so long that she has to stand up on a bench. These are called Tulip Shapes. Somebody else gave them that name, but it was my mother who began winding mallets this way, because you get up to the soft part and you don't have to do it physically. And my goal was to give it prominence, to give it respect, so that it would be placed with any other formal instrument.
In the 80s, I decided to take all the new marimba techniques that were around at that time and to write a concerto, a modern concerto that could demonstrate the potential for the instrument. When I wrote the marimba concerto at that time, back in the 80s, most of the music that have been written was music without melody, without sense of rhythm, everything very modern. I put together a melodic piece where people could connect emotionally with the piece.
I first started playing with the Philharmonic in 1970 when I was still a student at Juilliard. In terms of first concerti, the marimba got its first in 1940, Paul Creston. Vibes, Boulez, enter Stockhausen, enter Messiaen. Europe took care of this for us. To 1957 and West Side Story. Mr. Leonard Bernstein, speaking of the Philharmonic, incorporates the vibes into that famously and cool. And I'm like, oh, there we go.
I mean, I started out on keyboards, so that's how I got to keyboard percussion. But a lot of you did also.
I did.
Most percussionists start out on drums or drum set, and then expand into the harmonic aspect of it all.
That's right. That's right.
Do you think there's a personality trait that's common to students who pick up percussion?
The most are explorers of some kind.
I'd been playing drums for 8 years, and I needed to get some experience with melody and harmony instead of just rhythm. It was a good way to kind of round out my musical identity and make it a little bit more three-dimensional.
vibes at all. It was my mother's decision. She went to work in a sweatshop for 2 years, right? Saved up enough money to buy
As an extra gig.
As an extra gig to buy my first Deegan 2.5 octave vibraphone.
Beautiful.
I have to mention one more item about my mother. Lynn was a terrible alcoholic, so every time we'd show up for a lesson, which was like $3, I think, or $2, she'd bring him a bottle of wine. She'd leave me outside. She'd go into the room, shake him out of bed, right? Get him up, smack him around a little bit, give him some wine, make him some coffee, and said, all right, give my son a lesson. And that's how, like, that's...
But you didn't see that. You would go in and
I was outside because I knew that he was like trying to like.
He wasn't ready.
He wasn't ready. He was like looking to fool around a little bit, you know. And like, you know, my mom was built like this, and so.
Just yellow or blue or red or green. Anything that is yellow is going to be hard. Green is going to be medium hard, blue would be medium. So regardless of what instrument you are playing in our line, may it be marimba, vibes, xylophone, if it's yellow, it's going to be hard.
How did you get into this business of making mallets?
8 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing a commercial for Sears, a TV commercial for Sears. No matter which mallet I was using, I couldn't play soft enough. 8 o'clock at night, I'm playing marimba for Trini Lopez. I couldn't play hard enough. I couldn't play loud enough. About 4 months later, I started making my own mallets with different experiments.
Mallet instruments are very prominent in a lot of different African traditions. The vibraphones can also be seen as an extension of these traditions that go back way, thousands of years, and musicians trying to get in touch with those traditions and bring them into more modern music. It's just a matter of how things evolve and change over time. And so that doesn't preclude that the trombone or the vibraphone won't be very important instruments in the future of pop music. Lionel Hampton was a drummer, so he approached the vibraphone in a very similar way, playing with two mallets, playing with a lot of attack and with a lot of fire. We know that Lionel Hampton gets hired by Benny Goodman, Benny Goodman being really one of the most popular jazz musicians of the 1930s. Lionel Hampton embodies this movement from kind of a background gimmicky instrument all the way to a viable solo instrument to an actual featured band leader's instrument right in front of the bandstand with the band around the vibes.
It's no wonder they had nicknames for it, like the rock pile and the steam table and so on. I mean, this was not a pretty instrument. But here came Milt in the later 40s. He came to prominence in the early 50s after he moved to New York from Detroit. But he had been a guitar player and a singer. And he told me that his band director in Detroit somehow acquired a vibraphone and said, why don't you give this a try? He wanted it to sound like his guitar. So he switched to soft mallets. Milt slowed that vibrato down to a kind of a easy going, relax, wow, 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 wow kind of speed, and it changed the whole nature of the instrument. So I've always wanted to give Milt credit for making probably the most single important contribution to the evolution of the instrument. He showed us it could sound nice. He influenced every vibraphonist that came after him.
I'm playing here tonight. This is a performance I'm doing with Chick Corea, and that's one of my favorite places to play.
As a kid and started playing the vibraphone, and it was 1949. I was 6 years old, and the vibraphone was 20 years old. So there were a lot of things waiting to be discovered. It was great timing on my part and sheer luck that I was born in the right era.
You can see that the longest tubes are on the low end here, which we call the low end, lowest pitch. That's the longest air column that will resonate the lowest notes. So it's almost like if you think of a slide whistle, you know, or a trombone. As you pull it out, you get the lower notes. As you pull it in, you get the higher notes.
Well, aluminum wasn't invented until the early parts of the 20th century. And so actually, if you listen to radio in that day, they had an instrument that they would play to make this sound, bum, 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 the NBC Peacock sound. And that is still their moniker today from a sonic standpoint. That was done with the vibraphone. And I think the uniqueness of it was the fact that it had a pedal and damper system. It also had a motor. Of that era was kind of an important part to have the wah-wah kind of a sound, the vibrato happening, okay? Not necessarily the sound of today, but the sound of that era was very important. From the history of instrument design and development that I have researched, the two instruments that were American concepts was the banjo and the vibraphones that were so part of our culture, coming together as American inventions.
When the vibraphone was created, jazz was popular music. It was the only music going on. There was no rock and roll. And that was in the 30s and 40s and 50s with big bands. So when electric instruments, electric guitar came about in the 50s, and then the wave of rock and roll, the amount of visibility the vibraphone had started to shift.
So after we cut it, we sound it, and then we determine the best pitch for the barb.
If you cut 10 lengths that are 14 inches, they're not all going to be the same note. That's in between.
So while every piece of wood is basically the same thing, it's a little bit different.
maestro Arthur. Primero, va el maestro Arthur. Usted. Yeah! Wow!
And at that festival, in that area of Mexico, which used to be Guatemala, I began to see glimpses of answers to my search for a cultural connection, because I was playing an instrument that everyone on the street knew about. Everyone knew what a marimba was. Geez, I mean, in the Central Municipal Park, the gazebo there was called Marimba Park.
The marimba is our national instrument because it's part of our life. In Chiapas, we say the people born with the marimba music and die with the marimba music.
Did you grow up in this house?
Yeah, I was even born in this house.
Physically, you were born in the house?
Yeah. And my father too. And my grandfather bought this house many years ago and started making marimbas here.
Wow.
They represent an African marimba player, and over there Maya marimba player. I consider that our roots in the Mexican marimba. Originally, remember these instruments were mainly for making rhythm. Now we have a rhythm. Yeah. Now we have a melodic instrument with a section for playing melody, section for playing chords, and bass too.
Wow. I could play all day. You better.
And remember the other kind of mallets, very big and soft. For getting the fundamental sound in the bass section.
It's interesting that you mentioned the African instruments having more of a rhythm function.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. And with the Mexican marimba, we have both possibilities, making rhythm, making a bass section, and making melody.
Yeah.
Part of the evolution of the marimba.
The evolution of the marimba.
Exactly.
And these were made by local sculptors?
Exactly.
Or by friends of yours?
Exactly.
Or here in Chiapas?
Yeah, here in Chiapas de Corzo.
Wow.
Yeah. And here we have the Maya marimba player. In Mexico and Central America, only in the places where the Maya culture and the African slaves were together, the marimba developed. But mainly in the places where they found the Maya culture, they could make the connection and develop the instrument. Yeah. Not in places, for example, like Cuba or Haiti, where there's no marimba, not a big culture of the marimba. No matter a very big population of people from Africa.
Now this area of Chiapas was many years ago part of Guatemala.
Yeah, exactly. And this way we can get little by little until the final toning. Listening and then continue. Removing more and more wood.
Can I hear it again now?
Yeah.
It's up a tiny bit. smells great.
Yeah, yeah.
It's from Mexico?
Yeah, exactly. From the south of Mexico.
South of Mexico.
Exactly.
I always love to see the bark here.
Yeah.
The bark really gives you the idea that it's a tree.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And that's very, very nice, the connection between a very rustic piece of wood and the final marimba.
Mother Nature gives you the wood.
Exactly, yeah.
To make the music with,
exactly.
to make the sound.
Yeah. Approximately 8 to 10 marimbas a month, approximately 120 in a year.
And how many years has this factory been making marimbas?
100 years.
100 years?
Yeah, yeah. And he is working, my brother. It's not only marimba, it's a lot of richness we have all over the world that we must share. And I think you have experienced that no matter where you have been born, if you arrive to a place where they have a real culture, this culture touches you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very deep inside yourself.
When I was scheduled to play in Vienna, a pamphlet was being handed out around town making fun of the concert before it even started and acting as though it were some kind of an American circus act, you know, and they advised people not to show up. This is a picture of Brahms Hall in Vienna where I was terrified because no one applauded after my first number. Nobody moved, no one talked, no one blinked until after the preludium, and then they all just rose to their feet.
I've been asked, like, how do you come up with this concept of amplifying the vibraphone? It was by necessity. I was playing with a rock band in the early 60s with Jeremy Steig and the Satyrs. And everybody was starting to play in the band with electronic instruments. They're amplifying the flute. Jeremy Steig is a flautist. Warren Bernhardt as a keyboardist was playing clavinet. We had a blues guitar player who was like blasting away. I have to give credit to Richie Havens, who was a folk singer. And Richie had this little pickup, you see, and hooked it up to an amplifier. And he said, why don't you put one of these on every one of your bars? So I bought a whole set of them. At 17 at Juilliard, and then the next thing you know, I'm playing with Buddy Rich. You know? So I had to make the.
So you didn't stay at Juilliard?
I didn't stay. No, I never even went. It never got there.
Oh, yeah, 17, right?
I was,
went to school on the road.
That was my school, the University of Buddy Rich. I've started using this grip in my right hand because my grip is really unusual. You know, I'm holding a mallet with my pinky. So once in a while, if I know that I'm just going to be playing chords, I'll use this grip. And you know, it's very natural for me. Okay, so if I'm playing 4 mallets. it becomes more orchestral. There's harmony, and there's moving lines. So that's not a single voice. Just gonna lay into that, not too hard, just for the texture change to give us something in the background, right? Yeah, you can hold it for 4 bars. We were digging the bluesy stuff you started to do in there.
What can you do musically to highlight the expressive power of these instruments and reach people with?
Being a performer in today's environment is very difficult because there are far less places to perform. There's too many of us.
I went to Norway to play at the first ever ice festival for ice music instruments. We built an ice xylophone using water from a frozen lake.
We're cutting these blocks, and they're all bobbing at different rates. There was a rhythm there. Boom, 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 boom. This one's coming up, this one's coming down. It was the rhythm of the ice. 1, 2. It's one of these things where I just had no idea what was the next step ahead, and there were like 30 steps, you know? We cut the blocks, and we ended up getting them down the hill on these scooters. They were wrapped in deer skins.
My goodness.
Good morning. Welcome.
Fantastic.
So actually I do tune somehow, but I just tune to get the sound, not to get an exact tone. Just to make very small adjustments all the time. It's quite a large dimension of ice or water. So if you see, don't know in English, the water circle.
Cycle.
Yeah. And I guess this water, these instruments, have probably been through thousands of human beings and animals, and it's been on Earth for a very long time. So maybe it has part of someone's soul in there. Also,
Nice.
For me, it goes quite deep.
It gets dark there, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The blue hue makes the snow kind of dark blue.
I finished the instrument only hours before the concert, so I had no time to get to know them. I knew what the individual bars sounded like, but making music on them together was a complete unknown.
I'm having as much playful experience as the audience hearing it because it's entirely new for me.
Improvising the music was unique because I'd never heard the sounds before. In this way, I was both the audience and performer. Eventually, the instruments melted. Music went back to nature.
Whether you are black, whether you are white, we are all human beings, created by one God. Yes. Why don't we come together, love each other? Ho! Aha! Ho! 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 Africa united, Ghana unite, Ghana unite, Ghana unite, united, 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 united.
Okay, this is my daughter. But when she was 1 year, she could play some of my music I've been playing. She was trying to do it, and even the brothers are here. They can play. So, but here they are always born with it. My father too. He's a xylophonist and he's a carver. He builds xylophones as well. And then he taught me how to play.
G-Y-I-L?
That's all what you know.
This is the name of the instrument.
It brings the people together. Actually, we don't normally go to fell a tree or to fell a tree for the wood. We only go in for those the trees that fell down by itself and many years back, and then you can get a good you get a good xylophone out of it. This is a cobweb.
Cobweb?
Yeah, from the spider.
Okay.
Yeah. So originally that is what we use, and it vibrates so nice. Yeah, one layer.
So how long ago did you stop using the spider web?
Maybe 5, 6.
Oh,
7.
recently?
Yeah,
recently,
not far.
Mm-hmm.
Now it is at this port. So that means we have to dig it more, cut it more.
Why do you use this type of wood?
This type of wood, ancestors, our old people, that's what they use. And it is the best among all the wood because they have tried the other woods and they don't give the sound like this one. Yeah. And then we call this one lega.
Lega.
Yeah. And then the English call it rosewood.
Rosewood?
Yeah. So very good.
Rosewood from the American marimbas comes mostly from Honduras.
Exactly. You have them in North America, or is it South American countries? Yeah.
You know, this is what type of skin is it?
The skin is a goat.
Goat?
Yeah, and then, but normally it's cow. Okay. Good. Now it's high. Good. For you to have come here and to follow the roots of your traditional instrument, you are at the right center.
We will be able, I hope, to break down the barriers.
Definitely.
And once we begin to understand each other, we can live in a peaceful world where people are communicating instead of shooting each other.
We use songs to educate the community. We use songs that entertains the community. We use songs that bring community harmony. And it also fosters social solidarity.
in our culture, music is part of life. It's part of the everyday life of everybody. You choose to be part of it or you are out of it.
If you don't understand it, you can't dance. Every song that they will play have its meaning. So you dance, not they will play and you dance anything.
So you have the implicit journey and the explicit journey, and they're parallel. I go to Ghana and I go to Norway and I go to Brazil because I feel fulfilled there. We always seek fulfillment. We're all looking for the wholeness.
I guess in a sense, it's true. We are all explorers, searching for fulfillment of some kind. For me, it's a cultural connection. Maybe it's a need to feel a part of something bigger than myself. For others, like Paul, the search for fulfillment is an internal search. Here on the barren plains of Iceland, his fulfillment comes in the form of a solitary quest. To find art in the most unlikely places, extract music from the most unlikely elements. For Paul, the search is the fulfillment. The quest is its own reward.
Wow. To you, this is Sound to Cecilia, and this is a very beautiful tone, is D. And so is your name?
Oh!
Yes, so. Wow. This is Sound to Cecilia.
You had long since made it as a musician. And we finished the set, and I went and sat at the table, and there was a lot of people gathered around, and your dad came over and he said, "Mr. Consilio, can I see you for a minute?"
They're in trouble.
Uh-oh. And he took me aside and he said, "Do you remember the day that I told you not to encourage my son in music?" And I said, "I do, Mr. Lipner." And he said, "I was wrong."
Basically coming up with your own voice, you know, like your own style, no matter who taught you and no matter what group you're using, whatever, and is so important. almost, because it gives the band a mellower sound. It gives it this very beautiful sort of, you know, it's like like a sheen. It's like a varnish, right? And some guys want an edgier sound. One, you know, they would rather have a piano. They want it to be hard hitting, and they don't want to hear the vibraphone coming in with some melodious chords.
Very much like an organ. I just love the sound of wood. And when you put a resonator under it, you know, it brings all its brilliance forth. And especially the no notes. Everybody loves the low notes. But I just love the whole keyboard. We have to enlighten composers as to what the marimba can actually do. What it can sound like, its capabilities. And then I think, at least I've never approached any composer yet who wasn't really impressed with what it could do. They just don't know. But I think rather than, you know, to keep educating other percussionists isn't going to get us too far without any literature.
With the vibraphone, new things now will be new musical settings. I've, you know, tried playing with a lot of different kinds of people, different kinds of music, all hoping to broaden the role of the vibraphone in the world of music. And I feel it will continue to evolve as players, you know, get new ideas, hear new things, and say, hey, there's a good place for the vibraphone.
I really feel like what I'm doing has to mean more to me than anybody else so that I can continue to do what I do.
Tonight we're playing all Brazilian music, different styles, samba, bossa nova, samba reggae, samba rock. We're bringing the music of Brazil to New York City.
And I feel a real strong sense of connection with my instruments. I've gravitated towards the styles of music which represent the roots of my instruments.
The poem The Angels by John Updike talks about the good gentlemen Brahms, Handel, Mozart, and Scarlatti, and how they lavished measures of light upon us, telling us over and over that there is a realm above this planet of silent compromise. This poem is inspirational to me because it gives me a glimmer of hope that what I'm doing is a bit timeless and otherworldly. And it reminds us that others have been through this path before and devoted the course of their lives' work to music.